Am I centered okay? Is it background all right?
You're
all
looking
right. Lower enough? Okay. You guys do this
we're
more than I do.
Casual here. This is our 15th week doing like a live Sunday lesson. And the first time we've gone, like people have had really interesting questions and they've asked for more interesting guests. And it was really, really easy to, Angela and I had a conversation. It was like, okay, we need to get Dr. Liz Hale on the show. We met in person for the first time we spoke at the same event. It was like a Valentine's date night type event here in Salt Lake City. And we had corresponded in the past, but like meeting you in person, I'm like, man, Liz is one of the nicest people I think I've ever met. Yes. So you are a marriage and family therapist. You're a certified Gottman therapist, and you have your PhD in clinical psychology.
Oh, very nicely. Well, you've done your homework, my friend.
That's
great. I am, Nate and Angilyn, I'm really passionate about marital therapy. And I don't know where that comes from. I was single for a long time. I got married late in life. Even then, as a single person, I was passionate about marriage. It was kind of in my blood.
You and I sound like kindred spirits.
Very much so.
I know you. We are kind of kindred spirits, Nate. I
fell down that rabbit hole in my 20s, and I didn't get married until I was about 32. And I don't think I know of any guys that were more prepared for marriage because of the crazy journey I've been on following down this rabbit hole than I was. So I appreciate your obsession with marriage
indeed, there is kind of obsession, and you are, making such great contributions, not only just in our community, but just worldwide. So well done being able to utilize this format.
I'm glad we find
a huge fan.
Something fun together. And you are a contributor to KSL quite often, aren't you?
We have a program called Studio 5, Walker hosts. And so I have been there for, I guess ever since they started. I don't know, can't remember how many seasons, I better not say, 15-ish, I guess.
Yeah.
But yes, weekly or a couple times a month, it varies. But that's been a wonderful opportunity to meet people in the community. Sometimes I meet them in person, out and about, sometimes even through email. Mm-hmm. It's just a true connection, and I love it. It keeps me on my toes, that show.
So one of the things that I love about you is you practice what you preach. I don't think I've met very many people who it's as important to you to have a great marriage yourself as it is to teach other people how to have a great marriage. And I know that you practice in your day-to-day life, the things that you talk about on shows like this and what you teach your clients and stuff like that. So I want to just let our listeners know that this isn't just somebody who's book smart. This is somebody who actually has experience because she puts what she teaches into practice. So I'm excited to learn from you today, and we can go anywhere you want with this conversation. But I want to start off by one of the things you mentioned you've been interested in lately is meditation, and how that kind of can help contribute to a happier, healthier, more vibrant marriage.
I'm really fascinated by it. To tell you the truth, I'm not an expert meditator, Nate and Angilyn, but I'm becoming more and more interested in it. And I think I'm probably not alone in that. I think many of us think that if I want to take on meditation, I got to set aside an hour a day. I got to get the right pillow, like Nate had. I got to have the right time. I got to have the right pose. I can't be interrupted. And that's simply not true. Meditation and mindfulness often go hand in hand, even though they're quite different for someone who's more experienced. But sometimes it's just an ability of stopping our mind. And I think it goes very much in line with some of the research, like even Dr. John Gottman. What does he say when we get flooded, right? That diffuse physiological arousal. Does he say, take a break and go rehearse what you're going to say when you come back? He doesn't. He says, take a break, at least 20 minutes, go do something totally different before you come back. So when you're taking that break, why not think closely about where you're in line with your mate? Why not think about how you love that person? What makes this relationship work, even though you're frustrated? A favorite mantra of mine has been like when I complain about Ben, it's like, I don't know why he does this and that. And then I'll stop myself. It's like, wait a minute. He's just like me. Just like me is becoming my new mantra. Just like me. Just like me. One day I was I think it was, we were newly married, and I was here in my office where I am right now, and I had a bee in my bonnet about something he'd said or done. And I thought, how can I be married to someone who thinks that way or feels that way? I was just really on one inside myself. And I was moving some papers around, and I wish I could find the picture for you right now, but all of a sudden I came across this picture that his sister had just given me of Ben as probably not more than a year old, with a big belly and a diaper holding him, and the three little sisters were there as well. And it just melted me. I really started to cry. I went from being so angry to like, oh, I love that guy. That's still my guy. That little boy there who's innocent and precious came here just like that. And I need to learn how to better love him. So the things we think about our spouses all day long, I think are really powerful. Something else from Gottman before we talked together that I knew you would also be very familiar with is that negative sentiment override, or that positive sentiment override. I think the very things I think about my spouse all day long when I'm with him and not with him especially helps build that positive sentiment override. So I'm prepared a little bit more when the rubber meets the road or when difficult things happen. Right? I'm a little bit more prepared. The more I meditate, the more mindful I am.
I really love how simple that is. It's just like you said, you have this simple one sentence mantra that just switches your mindset and kind of brings you back into it. I'm finding just in everyday life, like you talked about how meditation can sometimes feel overwhelming if you're like not used to it or don't do it very much.
Right.
But it's so simple, even just a positive affirmation, one sentence thing that can switch your mindset and bring you back on track is so useful. So having those preset, I guess, like thinking of ones that you can pull out when you're in those moments is really helpful.
Along those lines, we'll give your viewers and listeners that wonderful website. I just happened to find it, 7 Meditations for Top Relationship Issues. Be simple. It's like 5 minutes each on each of the 7 issues. It's kind of fun to do together or to do individually. I've always looked at marriage as the great personal relationship course. Really, as it shows me a mirror about myself and the things I really don't like, hard for me to look at. But I really think that we're all kind of on that same journey. So whether we meditate separately or individually, we still get great benefit.
So we just put a link to that in the comments.
Wonderful.
So if you want to go to
Wonderful.
that.
Have you heard, I'm so curious, Angela and Nate, have you heard of Goldie Hawn's program that she teaches children on the brain? She teaches the brain is like this. It's kind of how it is.
Yeah, the fist. Yeah. But walk me through it. This is great.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, so
her program is called Mind Up. So Goldie Hawn has meditated for decades, right? And she is the founder of Mind Up. They have taught over 6 million children, plus their educators and their teachers, this program across the world. And kids are learning how the brain works. And it seems to be fascinating that she teaches this. Well, actually, the neuroscientists come up with that. But here in the front is the frontal lobe, right? The executive functioning. This is where I make my best decisions. Sometimes I flip my lid when the limbic system under here goes a little crazy. Part of the limbic system is my amygdala and the hippocampus. So even just those 3 parts of the brain are really helpful to kids. And then here's the brain, my wrist. But under here is that fight, flight, freeze, or faint part, right, of the amygdala. It's an almond shape, and our whole goal is to keep the amygdala small, not let it go crazy, to not treat everything in life as if it's an emergency.
Right.
An emergency. And then the hippocampus is part of this limbic system attached to the amygdala, but it's all about creating good memories. So it helps our amygdala stay in control. It's like, wait a minute, if I do this, what's going to happen? One of these children, 9-year-old who'd been learning this Mind Up program, came in from recess one day and said to his teacher, when I was at recess, Bobby pushed me. And the first thought I thought is like, I'm going to hit Bobby because he just pushed me. And then I thought to myself, you know what? If I hit Bobby, he's no longer going to be my best friend. And I'm so glad I didn't, because what I found out from Bobby is that David pushed Bobby, who then pushed me. It was a big accident. So isn't that brilliant? Just that slowing down, going, wait a minute. I do that, what's going to happen?
It reminds me of have you read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
Oh gosh, isn't that just the best book ever?
It's a wonderful book. And one of the things that he talks about that has always stuck with me, I feel like every book I read, there's like one or two passages that just stick in my brain and everything else goes away. But in this particular book, the thing that stuck with me is he talks about how in between a stimulus and a response, there's a small gap, a small period of time where you get to decide what you do. It doesn't happen immediately, like a stimulus, like Bobby pushes you and you immediately decide I'm going to push him back or punch him back. Like in every single person, there's a small window of time where you get to choose how you respond to the stimulus, whether it's a positive or negative stimulus. And I feel like what meditation does is helps us kind of zone in and focus on that space and almost give ourselves a little bit of an extra cushion. We learn to expand the space between the stimulus and the response so that we can have more of an opportunity to choose the good instead of reacting and just choosing what comes instinctually, because what comes instinctually is this. It's your amygdala. It's that fight, flight, freeze, faint mechanism that never elicits a positive response. It doesn't ever get you closer. It doesn't get you more intimacy. It doesn't get you more connection. It doesn't get you more trust. And so if you go with the instinctual response, you're setting yourself up for failure. But if you can learn to create a pause so you can choose something better, you're setting yourself up for success.
Because usually that reaction, that immediate reaction, is to worst case scenario. And how often is it really the worst case scenario? Not very often. Usually there's
that impulse. Yes, pardon me. That impulse control. It reminds me a bit of the Byron Katie work, which I know you also love, Nate. I do too. Did you take her 10-day course, Nate?
Not yet. I should do that though.
You will. You would love that. That is life changing. I bet I do the work every day of my life. Just asking myself the question: is that really true? Can you absolutely know that that's true? You know, how do you react when you believe that thought? Who would you be if you couldn't even think that thought? So that's that pause. It sounds like a lot, but there is still that pause to increase that impulse control. And John Gottman again, I remember asking him. It's like, okay, so he discovered in his research there's the marriage masters and the marriage disasters, right? Mm-hmm. So I said to him once, I said, John, so who are these marriage masters? Because I am not one. Who are these people? And have you studied them? And what do they have in common? And he said, well, that is just, it's a great question he's asked himself. Other than he thinks that for some reason they have that beat or that pause where they just go, before they respond. I just thought it was brilliant. They have that beat, that pause.
I love that.
Makes a difference. Isn't that cool? Between happily married couples and unhappily married couples, is that they repair and they repair pretty swiftly. And I would think in order to repair, you really have to watch the story that you tell yourself.
I love that. Okay, so I want to know, because I'm sure there's listeners who are going to be tuning into this who are going to think like, well, where do I even start if I'm meditating? Like, what are some popular misconceptions that you think people have about meditating that keeps them from doing this, from like practicing?
Right. Well, I suppose that some of that is having the space and time, having that appropriate pillow, right? Or thinking that, what do we typically say to someone when they're upset or crying or angry? Just take a deep breath, right? Can it really be that simple? And the answer is, it can really be that simple as just taking a deep breath. There's something that happens. You ever watched a baby? You're going to have a baby soon, and you'll watch that baby. That belly will just rise and fall, right? It's the cutest thing to watch a belly expand and relax. And somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we became chest breathers, right? It wasn't so attractive to have a big belly.
True. Yeah, that's big.
And so learning how to do that. And I think also the misconception is that it can be simple. And the mindfulness, when you're brushing your teeth, brush your teeth. Brush your teeth, be there. When you're eating raisins, eat a raisin. Notice how it tastes. Notice maybe where that raisin came from. How did it get to be in your home and in your hand and in your mouth now? When you're doing something, do it. When you're hugging your partner, hug your partner. When you're making love, make love. when you're there, be there. And the more we practice that, the more present we are in all of our relationships, not even just marriage, but children and best friends and extended family members as well.
And I think that word practice is the key word here. And it's one that we talk about frequently on the podcast. Is everything that we mention is a skill that requires learning and repetition in order to get good at it. It's not something where we just decide, I'm going to be really present from now on in my life, and then we're just perfect at it. It's something that you have to give yourself permission to be bad at it first and recognize it's going to take some time to master it. So I think we get discouraged when let's say we're in an argument and we don't use these skills, then later we think, oh, I failed. But the fact that you notice that you didn't use those skills is the first step, so that next time you can more quickly go there.
It's nicely done. And I think the meditation actually also really increases our empathy, our ability to really see from the other person's perspective. Given enough time, if we listen long enough, we can see somebody else's viewpoint. Sometimes we just don't take the time to listen long enough, right?
Yeah.
The other day, Ben and I were having a conversation, family party coming up tomorrow, and kind of where to put these 35 people and how things are going to work. And he kept having kind of his way, and I kept thinking we should spread people out. Anyway, long story short, I found myself just kind of deep breathing, He goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm just deep breathing because I bet you're probably right. And I'm just going to calm myself because I really want to hear you. He's almost always right, darn it. He almost always is. And so just having sometimes even a touchstone, in hypnotherapy, there's something called an anchor. So I bring my thumb and my first finger together and I give it a word. I give it a word like peace, or safety, or love, and just being there. Sometimes just simply doing that brings me right back to that moment, because I may not have an hour, right? We only have a couple of minutes to be able to relax, de-stress ourselves, to be able to be present in that moment. But you'll find the more you practice this, the easier it is when the conflict comes. And right, Nate, it's the conflict that counts, right?
Yeah.
And no pain, no gain. It's the conflict that determines the health of a relationship. So many people think, oh my gosh, if we're fighting and we're having a conflict, something must be terribly wrong. But something is terribly right.
Yes.
It's how we treat each other in that moment.
And someone in the comments just mentioned that Stephen Covey calls this seeking first to understand and then to be understood, which I think is super important. Like you said, when we take the time to listen long enough, we'll be able to empathize and see more from their perspective. And
what I really love about where we're going with this is, I think when you hear the word meditation, I think it's really tempting to think of like a Buddhist monk sitting in their robes for hours a day, like cross-legged on the ground and listening to like some gong or some chanting and the incense is burning. And that's what meditation is. But what I'm getting from you is that meditation is anything that brings you back to the present and helps you stay out of that fight, flight, freeze, or faint part of your brain. So what are the little things that you can do to help you breathe, to relax, to get into that good headspace where you love your partner again and you're not thinking the worst, but you're thinking the best? So I'm just like thinking in my head, what are the things that I do that are helpful? Lately, I've been journaling a lot. And I know that sitting down to journal helps me stay present when I can focus on like one thing and cut out social media and cut out everything else out of my life and just be present in that moment. Another thing that's been really interesting that you brought up that I want to just echo again is just remembering to breathe. Yes. Slow, deep breaths, like breathe in a way that fills up your lungs to its capacity. And there's a little YouTube video that I'll probably post in the comments after this is over. I think it's 2 minutes long, and it has this beautiful sound that goes 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out, 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out. It has this little animation that fills up and then empties. And when I do that for 2 minutes and I just fill up my lungs and then evacuate my lungs, and I do it for just 2 minutes, I finish and I like feel tingly all over my body, and I feel like grounded. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't know how stressed and tense I was. And just the little thing, like if I did that at every stoplight I hit, I think I'd be a much happier person.
Well done. There's a chime on my phone when my phone is on. There's a chime that goes off every 30 minutes. I have a chime right here, so I'll play it. This is exactly how it sounds.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ooh.
And all that does, it makes me go, oh yeah, where am I breathing? Where are my shoulders? And I'm just going to listen to the rest of that chime, that vibration all the way through. Sometimes I close my eyes if I can. When Ben hears that chime, he comes running as if it's a bell for him. He's so funny. So it makes us laugh also.
Pavlovian,
Laughter is another great way of kind of bringing you down to baseline of how is he just like me. I really don't think we came to this life to learn to be loved. I really think we came here to learn how to love. I think we're very much very self-aware, right? Somebody once said, if I had a stick and on one end is self-loathing, like I hate myself, my mom is fat, my grandma's fat, I'm always going to be fat kind of thing. Or the other side is self-loving, like I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's opposite ends of the same stick, which is self-absorption. I think we're constantly going to fight against that. And marriage is really teaching me how to unconditionally love this person who, at the end of the day, is just like me.
Yeah, it really helps you to take a step outside of yourself a little bit.
You know who writes a lot about this? Nate, have you ever heard about Greg Bear, Dr. Greg Bear? Real Love?
The name rings a bell. I don't think I've read it.
We got to make a note of that for our listeners and our viewers.
Greg Bear.
Real Love and Marriage. That is probably, even though we've got this great scientific stuff, right, with Dr. Sue Johnson and Dr. John Gottman, Dr. Greg Bear happens to be LDS. And I think his work is inspired about unconditional love. When I first found that book, I thought, oh, here it is. Here's that thing I've been dancing around my practice and in my own life. That we talk about Christ-like love from the pulpit and unconditional love. But few of us really still know what it sounds like, what it looks like, and what it doesn't. reallove.com, you can even see kind of Greg Bear in action. Truly, I'd have to say in my 30 years of therapizing, might be the best thing I've come across. It revolutionized my dating life. Truly, I read his book, Real Love and Dating. Real Love and Dating is all about dating with your worst honest foot forward. And finding somebody else who's going to also tell the truth and learn how to better love. 2 things. You're just looking for 2 things, and you want to get to know faster in your dating life. You want to get to know. You don't want to date someone on end, right? Get to know quickly and then move on. Set that person free and set yourself free. Anyway, I can't say enough about it. I think you'd love it.
Can we talk more about that? Because a lot of our listeners that we have right now, we do this for our YSA calling. We're the YSA ambassadors.
Oh, nice.
And so I think those 2 points you said to find out fast and to not date for too long. Let's dive into that a little bit, because I think it's important.
So you pay attention, right? You have a really good idea. First of all, you want to fill up. You want to fill those bloody, gaping wounds up, right? We don't want to go about dating with that desperation of I just got to find someone. Because if you and let's look at just a simple mathematical equation, 1/2 plus 1/2. That's usually in our Christian religions. I'm just looking for my other half, right? Yeah. 1/2 plus 1/2 is a whole. But because God told us to multiply and replenish the earth, what do you have, kiddos, when you multiply 1/2 times 1/2? We get a quarter.
Yeah,
we
quarter.
Get less as a couple than we ever were as 2 halves. So the whole goal is for Nate to be a whole one, for instance, where he's 100% accountable for himself, socially, spiritually, sexually, morally, physically, financially. And Angilyn, same thing, 100% accountable for himself, sexually, spiritually, socially, physically, financially, and mentally. 1 times 1 is 1. That's the whole goal. So when you go about dating and you're completely filled, as best you can anyway, you go with a lot greater insight, and you're just looking for that one person that you also have that connection with. And sometimes that's just, it is what it is. And it's hard to explain what makes a connection. but you pay attention to someone who is going to be very honest. So in other words, you'd ask them the question, so what happened to your last relationship or even your marriage? What caused the divorce? And what you're listening for is, do they have any type of responsibility or accountability? Is it always the other person's fault? Or is somebody willing to say, you know what, I was incredibly immature. I was a jerk. Or I just wasn't very kind. I wasn't very kind to my spouse. I take a lot of that responsibility. Have they learned? And are they willing to own it? That's really key. And pay attention. People will tell you who they are. You just have to believe them.
Yeah. So a lot of people will think, well, how far into the relationship can I ask these questions? And what's your opinion on that?
It's such a great question, Angilyn. And a lot of my friends would say, oh, I can't ask that question. And I'd say, oh, you better. This is your life. You absolutely best start asking those questions fairly quickly. So first date there's probably a lot, right, to go into someone's past marriage or dating life. But nonetheless, pay attention to how they're treating wait staff. Pay attention to how they're talking about their own family. Pay attention to their dreams to see if they're in line with yours. Pay attention to see how emotionally healthy that person is. Because you've got a big mountain to climb, and do you want to climb it with a 100-pound pack on your back or without that 100-pound pack?
Yeah.
So, but I would say, you know, who wrote, I can't remember if it was a book or it was just a good adage of 3 dates or less. Neil Clark Warren, the one who founded eHarmony.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great psychologist and relationship therapist. But I remember having that belief system, 3 dates or less. And, you know, that's not a commandment. But I think it's not a bad thought. Think about that. You know, I should pretty much know within 3 dates if this is someone I have potential with.
Yeah.
So you do start sharing a little bit of the truth sooner than later. That there's something about. Here's the key. Bottom line is that if you don't ever feel known, you will not feel accepted or loved by this person. So that person may say, you know, Liz, I love you, but I'm thinking, oh yeah, but if you really knew me, you may not love me. You may deem me broken, undeserving, unlovable, and that will keep a wedge between us. So we got to get to the point where we are like transparent. It's like, here I am, my warts, my weaknesses, my bad parts, and even some of my good. Show me yours. And let's see if together, you know, we can learn from each other and better learn to unconditionally love each other.
I love that.
I think that is so important.
This reminds me of, so was it 2 weeks ago we talked about Terry Real's relationship grid?
It was 3 weeks ago.
2 or 3 weeks. So a couple weeks ago we talked about Terry Real's relationship grid and how there's a x-axis and a y-axis. The x-axis is boundaries, and you have the extremes of
the wall.
You have walled off and boundaryless, and then on the y-axis you have grandiosity, which is being one up or better than, and on the bottom side you have shame. And how if you want to have relationship health or intimacy, real closeness, you have to work towards the center of both of those axes, where you can be transparent, you're not hidden behind a wall, where you can be not ashamed of your weaknesses and your faults, but like there's a sense of self-confidence, there's a sense of self-acceptance and reassurance that like, I love me for who I am, I know I've made mistakes, and somebody who's willing to do that for themselves can do that for somebody else.
And then grant that grace to somebody else as well.
And somebody who hides their mistakes, I think from the world, is also the type of person that might judge other people for their shortcomings and their mistakes as well. And so there's work that needs to be done. I don't think it's as easy as just like disclosing the things that you're scared of or the things that you're ashamed of that makes you that kind of person. I think it's a process, but participating in that process, I think, is the work of learning to date well and to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, not everyone is going to accept our truths, right? They're not going to say, you know what, I really appreciate you being honest with me. And I know myself well enough that you and I are not a match, but I am honored that we had this chance and I wish you well. Sometimes we just don't even know how to exit, but we don't do anyone any favors to continue a relationship when we know, for instance, let's say, I know that I'm really not going to be a good stepmom. So not dating with children. So being honest and candid, but people are not always going to accept us, and that's okay. We want to get to know faster. We're just looking for that one person. Yep.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this interview and are going to want to ask you to be their shoulder angel.
Oh
Can
gosh.
I just get a Liz Hale to just sit on my shoulder and whisper in my ear as I go on dates and tell me what questions to ask and like how to navigate this crazy terrain that is the dating world?
That real,
Can we
that
package
real,
that up somehow?
that Real Love and Dating book was just a kind of a Bible for me. It really did. Greg Bear has become a very close mentor, a good friend of mine through the years. I can't say enough about that. It just really changed my life. I met a couple guys and I said, I'm reading this book. Would you be interested in reading it? And even that tells you information, how serious is someone. My dear Ben, he didn't have a choice. He read the book and we had some pre-marriage counseling, a little post-marriage counseling. None of us can do this on our own. I'm a marriage therapist. I have blind spots. I can't do this on my own. None of us can. And it's hard. And Nate, you might feel the same way when you make a mistake. It's like, oh my gosh, I know better, right?
Every time.
And I just feel kind of that shame about it. It's like, you know what? I just go to my husband and I try to have that whole let's prepare faster model. Who else I really love along this line is Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Finding the Love You Want, right? Wasn't that the name of his first book?
Yep.
And talk about honesty. Like 30 years ago, his book is just launched, as I recall, and he was going on the Oprah Winfrey Show, right? And he gave Oprah that chance at her first Emmy by having that interview. But this couple had a secret. They were training couples and therapists all over the world on getting the love you want, and yet they were on the verge of divorce. They could not figure out how to deal with conflict. And they were always one-upping each other. And they had at least 5 therapists. The first 2 they fired because they knew more. And the 5th one fired them, saying, you're the couple from hell. And yet there is something that they finally came to this point. Again, it was on the brain. So that's another couple that I would have anybody study. They realized that there is this part of the brain that they really had to calm down. They really had to train themselves to slow down, to think really clearly about what the other person is saying, to take the turns, to be able to model back and they even developed this zero negativity tolerance. Not that they never made mistakes, but they made a great effort in coming right back 3 to 5 minutes to say, wait a minute, I was wrong. Can we start over? Can I have a do-over? Anyway, I love the honesty of them saying, we were on the verge of divorce. Here we are, these great experts. How honest of them. And they say, if we can do it, then you can do it.
Right. And that just helps to highlight that there's this gap between what you know and what you do.
Oh, yes. It's true, too.
It's just, Nate always says, be an action taker, not an insight chaser. And
love that.
Just learning to bridge that gap quickly between what you know and what you do.
That book of Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt I would love viewers to know about is Making Marriage Simple. I think it's the last book they wrote together, I think. But Making Marriage Simple, that's another favorite book of mine. They talk so honestly about what it's like to make those mistakes and yet be experts.
I've got that up on the screen now. I want to show you this comment that we did just get from Sam Mabry. He said, what was it? Yes, I need a shoulder, Liz. So
don't we all? I get it.
We can put you on speed dial for everybody. That'd be really great.
Oh man, I have such a tender spot for singles. Having married at 50, Ben and I were both 50. I had married in my 20s and had an annulment. I brought someone into my faith, and he just, I guess, married or joined the church just so that I'd marry him. I guess, I don't know, but it was annulled 8 or 9 months later, and then I was single through my 30s and 40s, and then married. And you get a little set in your ways, when you're 50 and you come together. But talk about great experience that we also brought to the table. But what I was wanting to say is singles have such a tender spot in my heart. Oh, I remember so much of the pain of it all. Just the tears and the frustration. And I had one prayer through those decades, and that was, okay, Heavenly Father, you close all the wrong doors, right? I will deal with the temporary heartbreak. You just close the wrong doors, keep your eye on the big picture for me, and only open the right doors. And boy, did he close doors left and right, where they were closing so fast, I couldn't really even understand it. And then when I did meet Ben, I thought it was kind of interesting that no doors were closing. And I just thought I couldn't find a reason, figure out why not to just keep moving forward. But I do remember kind of sitting in my condo downtown thinking, okay, well, almost as if he was saying, I don't know if this was true, almost as if he was saying, okay, Liz, here you go. This is what you said you've always wanted. What are you going to do? Are you going to have the faith? Are you going to have the trust to jump? Or are you going to stay put?
That's terrifying.
Just remember that. I remember going, I could be here in this condo and I've got a good life. I'm busy. I have a practice. I'm active in the church. But what I don't know is what would happen. Am I going to be sorry if I don't jump off this mountain of trust, knowing that something's going to come, knowing I'm going to be okay? I would always wonder what if had I not taken that leap of faith. But it's scary. I think there's a huge risk in marriage. It just is. But I wanted it. And a lot of my friends were saying, I'm going to wait for the millennium. I don't want it. I don't want it that bad. I'm afraid of it. And I was afraid too. But I was more afraid of passing up this great opportunity, this wonderful man. I wanted it all. I wanted the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs of marriage. I wanted the happy and I wanted the sad. I wanted to learn. So I'm really grateful I jumped, but it is a huge leap of faith. It just is.
Definitely. I think taking that leap of faith through the open door is one of the most terrifying things you can do.
You almost didn't marry me because of that.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's so honest of you.
It terrifies me looking back at, again, what you said about how the doors were closing. And it's almost easier when the doors close because you're like, okay, that's not right. I know it's not right. But with me, the door was wide open. And I was like, wait a second. I'm not used to having this door wide open. I've never been through this door before. What's on the other side of this door? I don't know if I want it. And I almost didn't. I almost didn't go through that door. And it scares me how close I was to just shutting the door myself. And grateful that I went through.
I am too. I used to have nightmares when I was dating those my 30s and 40s that I had another annulment, right? I made another mistake. I woke up in a deep sweat, and sometimes that happens too. Sometimes we marry once, twice, three times. I have such admiration for people that are tenacious. I don't criticize them. I get it. You're trying to learn and you're trying to go, and more power to you to try to keep going. The tricky part about a couple of marriages is that wherever I go, there I am, right? I take me, Liz. I still take my warts and my weaknesses. So I got to figure this out. I got to figure out what happened in that relationship. What role did I play? What part belongs to me that I need to change?
So I want to, if you don't mind, can I continue down this rabbit hole a little bit? I'm loving this conversation. And I would love to know if you could go back in time and whisper in 30-something Liz or 40-something Liz's ear and give her a word of encouragement or advice. What would you say to that version of you?
Wow. I guess it would be that your life is probably not going to look like how you thought it would look. You may not have your own children in this life. You may be delayed. You may need to get an advanced degree, and maybe you'll just do something great with that or help people in a way that maybe you couldn't have in a traditional way as an LDS woman married with children and grandchildren. Okay, there are other opportunities than this life.
Yeah, I think that's an important reminder that I think sometimes we get this idea when we're younger of what our life is going to look like when we're older, or what hopes and dreams that we have that maybe won't be realized. And then when you get to that point where you realize that it's not the same, there can be a mourning process. But if you get stuck in that, you can't really see the beauty of your life as it is. And I think it's sad sometimes when we see that we see when people get stuck in that past,
or when grieving turns into bitterness.
Right. But to know that your life may not look like what you thought it would, but it could be even more beautiful and better than you ever imagined it could be.
Or just different.
Right.
And still be fulfilling and rewarding.
So true. I think a lot of people are going through this with COVID. A lot of children and teenagers. It's like, wow, they are social beings. And now, especially with Salt Lake School District, they're not going back to school for right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a mother text me this morning, like, can you help my 9-year-old? What do I do for her? And she's terribly depressed, and this is really difficult. Life is not going how we thought it would right now. It's not going how we're used to it going. It's difficult. Things have stopped. We're grieving a lot of things. It's difficult for young people, and yet we do. Now what, right?
Mm.
Now what? It's not how we wanted it to be, how we thought it would be. Now what?
Yeah. We just got a comment from Sam, and there's another one from Stephen that I want to bring up as well. But Sam's, this is really relevant. He said, I'm stuck in this. This isn't how my life was supposed to look like. How do I get out of that? So if you do feel stuck in that phase, Dr. Liz, what would you say to somebody stuck there?
It goes back to Katie a little bit. I mean, Katie, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. Right? So whatever I resist persists. So whatever you can do, dear Sam, to say, what, this is my life. This is my life now, and I'm missing out on it. By not embracing how it is right now, I'm going to miss out. So what am I going to start to create now? Now what? I love the Katieism is you argue with reality, you lose. But only every time. That's right. So right now I'm a single person, or I'm this age, or I'm unemployed, or I'm employed, or I finished school or didn't finish school. Now what? What do I want for my life? What do I want for this life? And now create it. How do we let go, let God, and now embrace what it is we really want to create for ourselves?
And her book is called Loving What Is, and it is a wonderful, wonderful book. And if you go to thework.com, she's got a lot of really great material there as well.
Doesn't she? Or Who Would You Be Without Your Story? I love that one too.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet.
You can even work with some of the, I can't remember what they're called, but if you go to thework.com, there's a way for you to do the work with someone online.
The Judging Your Neighbor worksheet.
It's brilliant.
If you go to thework.com, it's in the upper right-hand corner of the website. You can download a PDF, and it walks you through the questions to help you figure out the lies that you're telling yourself and the ways that you're fighting against reality, and it'll allow you to surrender and accept life exactly as it is.
Yep, that's right. So the story is, I should be married. I should be married. Who would you be without that story? And how do you treat yourself when you believe that story that I should be married? How do you respond? How do you treat other people when you believe the thought that I should be married when I'm not? We storytelling. It's a big one. And maybe that's why meditation can be such a break, because the chatter stops, right?
Yes.
Way to bring that full circle.
Yes.
Just kind of focus on the breathing and what I'm touching, what I'm feeling. Just think about even the 5 senses. Keep meditation simple in order to do it. What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I tasting? What am I feeling inside? What am I feeling on my fingertips? Let all your senses be.
I love that. Okay, I want to take one other audience question, and then I want to see if we can wrap things up here, because this is a beautiful conversation. Yes. This question I would love to hear your thoughts on. Stephen says, does the weight of time and eternity help or hinder the path to a healthy marriage? And that's an interesting thing to ruminate on. Obviously, there's not I'm not going to lead the witness here. I'm going to let you just give your thoughts.
Ooh, I'd love to hear that for the two of you, though, however, as well. Oh, boy. I mean, it's a beautiful thought, isn't it? It's a beautiful thought, I think, when things are going well and you found someone you just treasure. It's like, I am so grateful I have this person forever, because I realize that it could be brief. I look at Benny and I think, oh, okay, so what, 57? It's like, well, I don't know how long either one of us will be here. So it makes me milk the moment, and also grateful that there's a hereafter. I also think that we can get a little caught up in the hereafter, and we're not just even living in the present.
Yeah.
I don't really know the details of the hereafter, right? I believe it's there. I pray, I hope that it is, but boy, right here and right now is my bigger focus, is being the kind of woman and wife and friend and lover that I'm most proud of. How do I do that? Every day, how do I wake up and say, what can I do today to make Ben's life more worth living? And then do that thing. So I am so busy with the here and now. I have faith in the hereafter, but boy, my focus is now.
I love that, because I do think that this time and eternity, the way that Stephen's asked, can hinder in what you said, and that we sometimes get complacent and think, oh, well, in the next life.
Sure. And, and by the way, I think that's really okay for some people to say, I don't think marriage is for me. I criticize no one on that. I hope that people hear that in me. It was just for me. I wanted it, but it's personal. It's very personal. Not everyone feels that way. And I support and honor that. Go ahead. Excuse me.
No. And I was just saying, when it comes to the getting complacent in our relationships, thinking I was married in the temple, we have an eternal marriage, check the box.
Right.
It's going to be so great in eternity. And then we forget about making it great now, and that we can make it great now, and we don't have to wait for eternity.
Angilyn, you're so right. And oftentimes couples, when they have children, especially, I can't even relate to the busyness of that life. And you guys are about ready to face that. Is that I think sometimes my couples I work with is they think that, okay, so when the kids are grown, when we move, when I get that job, then we'll deal with our marriage. But in the meantime, it's not front and center. And yet marriages, people don't pause. We can't put marriages on hold. It just doesn't work that way. We're going to be in trouble if we don't keep this front and center.
Yes. One of my favorite things that I've read recently was by David Schnarch. And he talks about how stop working on your marriage and let your marriage work on you. And
I remember that quote.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that? Remind me.
So he basically means, like, when you're married, you are going to get exposed. The very worst parts of you are going to be exposed. Your weaknesses, your anxieties, your frustrations, your short temper, the things that irritate you, all those things come right to the surface because you're living with somebody who's really good at exploiting those things. And if instead of trying to work on your marriage, if you let your marriage bring those things to the surface and then self-examine and say, these are the things that I need to be better at, and then you get to work, you're working on yourself. Your marriage is bringing those things out of you to make you a better person. And I think there's a lot of people, it's more comfortable for them. And this is kind of the core message of our podcast and why we do this. But the core message, or not the core message, that their instinct is to play it safe, keep things hidden, don't bring them up, don't address the hard things. If we ignore it, it'll go away. If we sweep it under the rug, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And they never confront those things. And then they live this life full of secrets and unspoken frustrations, and they get into that negative sentiment override, and they don't have a low threshold for negativity. The stuff piles up, and they aren't happy in their relationship. And the thought of eternity gets scary, because how long do you want? An eternity of walking on eggshells does not sound fun. An eternity of avoiding hard conversations or holding your breath while waiting for your partner to emotionally explode. Like, that's not something that I think anybody would look forward to for eternity. But if you humble yourself and you take a deep breath and you let your marriage work on you, and you have the humility to say, man, I have a short temper. Man, I'm a little bit contemptuous. Man, I tend to shut down a lot and I don't like to emotionally connect with people. Or I'm not very good at taking responsibility for cultivating desire in my marriage. If you can start saying those things and then doing the work to heal yourself and fix yourself, marriage is hard, but it's the most rewarding thing that you can, that I have participated in. And
that was
thanks.
Beautiful description of that. I like that.
That to me is what you're saying here. And it's just it's really touched my heart. It's been really wonderful to hear you say that. And so just the eternity thing, if you have an eternity of momentum in the right direction, that is, I think, where it gets exciting. Because the coolest thing about marriage for me right now is it doesn't matter how good it gets, it can always get better, because I can always be better. But if you're stuck in an eternity of that frustration and holding your breath and bad things, like
Doesn't sound very exciting.
I think it could be a hindrance. So it's all about perspective.
No kidding. That no pain, no gain is not just for diet and exercise.
Yeah.
For relationships too. Oftentimes I'll tell my couple, you kind of know you're with the right person when the very thing they need from you is the hardest thing for you to give, but probably the best thing for you to learn how to give. You usually know you're with the right person.
Yeah.
I'm always doing little exercises or little experiments. My latest one right now, I've never shared with my husband even, is he'll ask me to do something. And I specifically try to say to him out loud, yes, I would love to do that for you. I'd be happy to. Absolutely, honey. Of course I would. So my experiment is not only does Ben hear that, I don't know if he really even notices, but my own inner ear is always eavesdropping and I'm hearing it. And I'm softening myself saying, oh boy, I'm really tired, but of course I'll do that for him. I love him. He's the most important person in my whole world. So your inner ear is always eavesdropping. I think that, again, is why meditation is helpful. Even while practicing acting loving, even if I don't feel it, right? Our feelings follow our behavior. We're always kind of a work in progress. Just make sure we're working towards that one direction that we're most proud of.
I love that.
Thank you so much for all.
It's such a pleasure.
This is jam-packed with so many golden nuggets, I feel like.
You are brilliant, and I hope that you know that we love you.
Thank you for being the couple that you are. Wow, talk about inspiring. And I'm praying for a smooth delivery, Angilyn, and Nate, I'm so excited for you. Please keep us posted. We're all going to want to know when that baby comes.
We will.
We definitely will.
Before we leave, I want to give you a chance, because I guarantee you there's going to be somebody who's listening who's like, where can I learn more about Liz? Where can I find more Liz? So if people wanted to either like work with you or they just wanted to learn more about who you are and what you're up to, where's a good place for them to go?
I think I'm pretty easy to find. You can probably find the good, the bad, and the ugly on me if you Google me, right? But just Dr. Liz Hale. I have a website, drlizhale.com, or my number is on there too. But thank you for asking, and it's been a real honor. So thank you so much. I love talking about this, as I know do you. So thanks, guys.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you.